Hello and welcome to Super Pumped. Akshay, what are we doing today?
Okay, so today we're talking to EPNS, Ethereum Push Notification Service. It's another incredible team from India that have been building for a while now. They're a simple product. They send you push notifications from decentralized apps, just like you would get a push notification from an Uber app if you requested an Uber or if you order food. It's incredibly simple and elegant product for decentralized finance. The cool part is they got recognized by the Ethereum community early on. They got funded on Gitcoin. They crowdfunded their first round of $17,000.
Oh, nice.
And that's pretty cool. They are from your neck of the woods.
Yeah, from Andheri East.
From the Andheri East. They had no connections really. They just got into crypto with a good idea, posted it online, and raised money. And now they're expanding and hiring. And I'm very excited about what they can do. And maybe they're the next big team to come out of India. Just as a disclaimer, Tanmay and I are very tiny investors in this protocol. We like the team. We want to support them. But of course,
This is not a call for you to go buy push tokens, which is, the EPNS tokens. They're called push tokens. Please don't go and buy it. This is definitely not a signal for you to do that. However, EPNS is listed on our job board, the Super Pump job board. That's there. You can go work at EPNS. They have an opening. You should go check out the job board. The link is in the description. They're building something super interesting, a decentralized communications layer. That's a super important part of, it's going to be a super important part of the DeFi ecosystem is what we think. And we're excited to see the interview. All right, Akshay, we're here today with the founders of EPNS, which is Ethereum Push Notification Service. Right? Harsh, Richa, welcome to the show. How are you guys doing?
Thanks for having us, Tanmay.
Hey Akshay, hey Tanmay. Yeah, doing really well.
hey guys.
Okay, so I'm gonna try and explain what EPNS is. Okay, and
Go for it,
you
Tanmay.
all will be very, very impressed with me. Right? So currently on our phones, the way push notifications are sent is they come through the protocol set by Google and Apple. Right? Because all our phones, the systems are Google and Apple. So they decide what the rules are, how push notifications would work. The communications protocol is made by these two. So in a way, it's a centralized protocol. But what do you do in the world of blockchain and crypto? Everything has to be decentralized, right? So who makes this protocol, right? And that's what EPNS is building for the decentralized ecosystem. Am I correct?
I have tears.
Huh?
This is beautiful.
Harsh, Richa, am I right?
100%, man.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit more and tell our viewers, something more about what you guys are doing?
Sure. So, right now, if you look at any interaction which we do virtually, people don't realize, but everything is driven by notifications or basically a communication layer where the services come to you. So, whenever we order from Amazon, the delivery, you don't go to the Amazon app again and again and check. You basically get a notification telling you that the product has been dispatched. With Twitter also, whenever your post is getting viral, you don't go ahead and check for Twitter. I
Correct.
mean, we do because we are in crypto. So working in crypto equals tweeting in crypto all day.
Correct.
But yeah, any other person will not do that. Same for emails, same for payments, same for anything you do in virtual Web 2.0 world or the traditional internet. But when you come to blockchain and the Web 3.0, I mean, it's so new that there was no communication layer built for it. People were trying to solve a lot of things, speed, scalability, security, and all those other aspects which will help the blockchain grow. But yeah, once we got to the point where innovation started happening, people quickly realized that this communication is missing. But there's no way for a service to send notification to users because they have wallet addresses, they are pseudo anonymous wallet addresses. So there needs to be a way to have a standard set of communication or have a standard set of specification built specifically for Web 3.0. So just like how Apple and Google basically built their notification system, which is sort of closed platform, EPNS or Ethereum Push Notification Service is basically building the first ever Web 3.0 push notification service or the communication middleware.
Got it. So actually, I don't know how even a centralized communication protocol works, right? So can you tell me what, for example, right, like what kind of rules do Apple and Google have, and how would that be different on a decentralized protocol. Can you tell me a little bit more about what the prime differences would be with an example?
Any protocol which is built for the case of Apple and Google, so the communication middleware or the push notification service middleware they have built. So what this communication middleware does is it basically provides a single point for all the app owners to basically interact to and send notification to any of the users. And what this middleware does is whenever an app owner sends a notification out to this middleware.
So just to be clear, app owner is basically like if, let's say, you book an Uber ride and your car has arrived, then Uber needs to communicate to the rider that the car has arrived, and Uber, the app owner in this case, would send a piece of communication to Apple or Google, who would then approve it or disapprove it, and then it would go to the rider.
Correct. Exactly. So what it does is, I mean, this simple thing that there's a middleware which everyone will interact to, this opens up a whole lot of opportunities, because now all of a sudden Apple ecosystem just has to listen to this single middleware. As opposed to, listening to only popular services and their servers. Imagine if your Apple ecosystem or your Apple phone was listening to Facebook as well as Twitter as well as Amazon and hundreds of other services, trying to see if they want to send any communication to the user. I mean, it's not possible, because it will drain the battery in an instance, and it will make it very centralized or very undemocratic, wherein your service needs to become popular that Apple adapts it. So this middleware basically solved that, because now you have a set of rules. Now this middleware verifies that you are who you say you are. So Uber, when they send their notification, they basically also verify themselves. And the middleware also makes sure that you are not spamming the user. It basically makes sure that the user has opted in to receive notification from Uber before it shows it on your screen. Otherwise, someone can come and, just flood your home screen with tons and tons of notifications.
Correct. OLX, I'm looking at you.
Telegram is also there.
Telegram, I'm looking at you.
Awesome.
Yeah, and just to sort of do a, we spoke about Uber, and you're talking about examples. So if you look about, at Web2, we have notifications for everything in our daily digital life, right? Your Amazon deliveries, your bank, any payments that need to go out, or even your calls, WhatsApp, phone, FaceTime, everything is a notification. But like when you look at the decentralized or the Web3 ecosystem, the communication is sort of missing at this point of time.
Because right now it's all pull. Like I am obsessed with going and seeing what's the update than it telling me. Right?
Exactly.
Got it.
And as a user, every service wants to give the best user experience. So the user experience is missing because of that. And notifications in Web3 or what we are trying to build, EPNS, is sort of closing that gap and enabling user experience, a better user experience.
So in a decentralized communications protocol, like how do you make the rules?
You can make the rules in a decentralized way. And for that, you can use smart contracts, which are basically code files running on top of Solidity or running on top of Ethereum. And that code file basically dictate that these are the rules. And this is how something will be done. And that's the way it's different from a centralized solution is that once you deploy this code file, it's very transparent, it's visible to all the users, and it cannot be changed. And even, when you have upgradability cooked into it, people can see it, and people can basically know that if you have bad intentions in mind, or, if this is basically a trustless solution. And that's how a decentralized middleware operates. That's what we are creating. You either create a smart contract, which will basically be protected by the Ethereum network, or you create your own sort of network, which is a P2P based connection of nodes, which will self-govern themselves. So those are the two ways by which decentralized network operates.
Akshay, you are very into, decentralized finance and use a bunch of these apps. Like I remember you were telling me from your Coinbase wallet, if you were to access a dApp, It's still a little browser in it. Can you give some examples of where you have craved a notification?
Yeah, this actually, I was just thinking of basically breaking down that Web3 thing right now, of what it means. So if you look at an app like Compound or Aave, right? Let's take Compound for example, where you can go into Compound and deposit some money and earn an interest on that money. Okay, so you can deposit, let's say US dollar, USDT or USDC, and earn an interest on that. Now, I would like to know at some, and those that interest varies over time, right? So let's say you want to get a notification every time the interest drops below 3%.
Hmm.
Now, there's no way to do that today, right? Because it's a dynamic interest rate, and these are generally relatively more volatile markets, right? So if I want to be notified when the interest rate drops below a certain level, there's no way for me to do that. That's an obvious use case, right?
Yeah.
Another example is, let's assume in the same protocol, I take a loan, okay, and I deposit some ether and I take a loan against that ether. And let's say the price of ether drops by 30%, 40%, which risks liquidating my collateral, right? It's like how you go put your house
Correct.
as collateral in a bank and then take a loan against that. But the price of your house doesn't go like that, but sometimes it does.
Correct.
And so when it falls below a certain threshold, I want to be notified so I can deposit more collateral, right, and not get liquidated. So that's another example of where notifications will be valuable.
Or Akshay, if your friend convinces you it's a good idea to go do fusion yield farming on a website you've never tried before, and halfway through yield farming, the value of the token has collapsed by 70%, so everything you farmed is now worthless. A push notification would have helped there, Akshay. What do you think? Huh?
I don't know what you're talking about, but that seems like an oddly specific example.
Yes, it does seem specific.
This is an incredible.
Some people find other gullible friends as partners for their experiments and convince them to transfer $5,000 and do this experiment with them.
I mean, look, we're in it for the tech, right? So this was when the first farms launched on Solana, and this token called Step launched on Solana, and it was, I think the yields were like 2,500% a year or something like this. Okay. And so I was like, Tanmay, I want to show you what yield farming is. So get onto this. It's gasless, so we don't have to spend. So he gets onto it, right? And I'm like, look, there's something called impermanent loss. You're going to learn about it the hard way, but just treat it as education. So he goes, that's fine. And he's like, dude, I'm making $100 every hour. I'm like, yeah. Okay. So that's exciting, right? And then this token ends up being like, it ends up getting valued at like $4 billion or something like this, because everyone's farming it. And then it dumps to like $400 million market cap. It's still overvalued for a website that just has your portfolio. So obviously Tanmay is like, what the hell is? I'm like, okay, so now we're going to work through what impermanent loss. He's like, I don't need to know that. I already read it, and I now know that I should be farming only stablecoin pools. So I was like, see, this is great. You spent like $300 to learn the most valuable lesson about yield farming. Don't do it.
So this was another experience and a half, right? So I can see the use case in all these in the examples that were given. Are there any ones that you are personally excited about, something that you foresee that other people aren't seeing, that this is how push notification can help? I'm sure there's a bunch of these in your head, right?
Actually, they are a ton. So basically, when we started building, we are a huge fan of just looking at patterns, or trying to say that we look at patterns and we recognize patterns. But when we created this, we kind of realized that blockchain still is very, very early. I mean, we are talking about solving scalability and security and communication. So this is like very pre-internet days, with the modem doing TTT. So,
yeah, I mean, we're talking about a decentralized social network being built today, right? Like, we're definitely not there yet.
Definitely. So that was the thing when we started. We wanted this to be like really, really flexible. And the way we did this was that notifications. I mean, we imagined it to be something which can be infinitely flexible. The way we basically structured it is that you can send almost anything as a notification. It's just content independent.
What does that
means-
mean?
Basically, that means that notification in its very technical form are just JSON payloads that are getting delivered. And this JSON payload defines what the notification is and how to interpret it. So basically, you don't have to really just send textual messages. You can send images, you can send videos, you can send call to actions, or basically anything. We're looking at it like a social feed, which basically can be transformed or utilized for anything. So, some of the examples which we thought of, which are still not there, but, might come, is decentralized video. So let's say if there's a decentralized FaceTime in the future, then, EPNS should be able to send that payload out, or it's decentralized OTP or multi-factor authentication. That means that the user should be able to read an encrypted notification. Even when it's on blockchain, it's encrypted so that only the user can basically see it. And, we are not done yet. I mean, while we created the entire structure and we created provisions to make sure that notifications can be anything, even encrypted notification or whatever the service might want to do right now or in the future, we are also trying to run some pilot programs with the top projects in the cryptosphere. Like, for example, Uniswap and Gnosis and Gitcoin and Polygon and Frontier and Alpha Homara and Treebox and,
Okay. Just stop showing off.
projects. Yeah.
So Uniswap is a decentralized exchange, which is basically Coinbase on the blockchain. Right? Something like this. Gnosis Safe is a multi-sig, which is actually a really cool product where it's a safe effectively. It's a safe on the internet. And you can have 3 out of 5 people who are you can set conditions.
Multi-sig is
where 3 out
multiple
of-
signatures, right? Which means,
Exactly.
3 out of 5, if they allow you access, you can access it.
It's pretty cool, right? So it's like a bank on the internet that many people control.
So, all of these things, all of these projects, they are very, very important to the ecosystem, and they have very specific needs. Like for Gnosis multisig, let's say 4 of us have a multisig. Now, whenever I try to request some funds from this multisig, I'll probably need 3 signatures or 2 signatures. And the only way I can basically request for signatures, basically I either have to call you or Richa or Akshay to basically say that, please insert your key as well so that the funds can be released. That should not be the case. Whenever, you have a multi-sig in a bank, the bank will basically notify all the other authorized representative that, hey, someone is trying to access the funds. Do you want to approve or disapprove it? So EPNS basically fits in that gap. Basically makes sure that, this thing, the Web 3.0, can finally become user-friendly. I mean, we play a bit of the part in improving the user-friendliness.
Do you think it becomes like a mail inbox or an SMS or a text inbox at some point? Do you think they just merge, they become one thing?
Yeah, given that it's like a social feed, the way it's be presented, it feels like it's going to be like a communications inbox, like what Akshay is saying.
Definitely. I mean, that's the thing. We have kept provisions for it to be like a social feed or for it to be very temporary. Basically, the service can do whatever they want. Like, let's say, for example, the loan liquidation thing we were talking about. So loan liquidation is something that is very temporary. You take an action on it and that's it. After that, you don't really need to store it or you need to see it. But when we are talking about, let's say, a team doing an AMA, maybe that is something which is very permanent and that should be there. Or, when a social feed or a decentralized social network comes, then that social feed should be permanent. So again, we made sure that all of these provisions are there and we are testing the crap out of it right now just to make sure that, the V1 really fits the bill for everyone.
So just to be clear, right? Like in my mind, when you say push notifications, like what you are describing is essentially a social feed, which is something that the dApps are pushing through. But in my mind, push notifications are that tirding, that beautiful little sound and that thing that comes up. Why can't we have that? I'm assuming the reason is that's centralized. Apple controls it. Like, how can we have almost like a centralized experience in a decentralized way? Am I making sense?
You are, and actually, we do have that. I mean, we realize that there's no zero and one. There's no like that everything happens on blockchain or everything happens without blockchain. I mean, there is going to be a bridge of sorts, and we have created that. So even right now, these push notifications, the home screen, and it coming on the home screen, provisions are there, and they're actually working right now. We do have a alpha product out. So basically, we do have a Web3 to Web2 bridge, which ensures that these notifications make their way to Google and Apple ecosystem. Because in the end, I mean, you need to make sure that you encompass this entire system. You need to make sure that you have provisions that Apple and Google can also show these notifications. It should not be, I mean, it should not be cut off from any sort of platform, whether it's closed or open. The platform in itself is open, but it should have ways by which it can make its way through those platforms.
It's fascinating, Akshay. It's like a feed of all your money, right? Like that's pretty cool, right? Like right now, like that experience doesn't exist. But I think now, as you get more into crypto, all I want to do is read about crypto. All I want to do is think about my money. And here's this really nifty way of it all coming together, which I think is cool. I think you need a separate protocol just for Elon Musk at this point, just to keep people up to date with what the hell he's tweeting about.
We don't talk about Elon Musk right now.
Akshay, when we first discussed EPNS, I remember, Akshay, we were just marveled by what a simple problem, right, that people didn't think about, but it has enormous implications. How did you guys stumble upon this problem that you decided that you wanted to solve?
I mean, the roots of this problem, actually, we stumbled upon this problem and why it's important. It was back in 2010. So, I mean, I started my entrepreneur journey as a mobile developer. That was back in 2010. And at that point of time, I saw Apple coming out with their Apple Push Notification Service, APNS for short. And in 2010, if you were programming on Apple, it was hell. You had to do everything by yourself, even, garbage collection. I'm probably going into a bit technical details over here. So let me just pull back. So basically at that point of time, APNS was their Apple Push Notification Service. And we had an app which was like the top 10 in the US App Store. So of course, that meant that whatever new technology is coming in, we have to study and we have to put it in. So at that point of time, I studied about the entire middleware. But my journey into crypto and my journey into this project actually started back in 2017-18. In 2018, I basically realized that you can basically program in Solidity or Ethereum is a programmable money. The way I realized it was like in 2016, Bitcoin went to $1,000. So, all of us were talking about it. And then, when all of us were talking about it, I quickly realized that I have to trade. And when I started trading, it was a classic strategy of buying high and selling low. So, yeah, it really worked.
Tanmay knows about that very well.
Yeah.
He's deeply familiar. He runs a hedge fund on that strategy. When was the first time you heard about Bitcoin? I think that's a cool story.
So actually, it was 2015, 16. And I mean, in India, Bitcoin had reached around $1,000. So everyone was talking about it. Like, Bitcoin was at 10 cents and now it's $1,000. And then, very soon Bitcoin is all over. Bitcoin is dead. It's a Ponzi scheme. So, we covered all of those things in very, very short time. But yeah, what happened was when people started talking about Bitcoin and when I started trading, I realized that, there's not even Bitcoin. There's so many coins out there. And some of those coins, they basically were solving some other things. Or, speculation wise, it really felt nice because Bitcoin was $1,000. Some of the coins were like 10 cents and we don't realize market cap at that point of time. So what I did was I created a trading bot This trading bot, basically what it did was it very quickly, because I realized that, any coin, when it was going through exchanges, like from lower exchanges to higher exchanges, for example, from, let's say, Bitfinex to Binance, the coin rised up in value. So I quickly realized that there might be some advantage, or there might be some money which can be made over here. So created a trading bot, and what this trading bot used to do was it used to look for the shit coins which were in tier C exchanges, and then whenever news came that these coins are going to be listed on tier B and tier A exchanges, the trading bot basically bought all the coins from tier C and then just waited till they listed on tier B or tier A, and sold it off.
Can you edit this out of the episode? Hey Harsh, can you send this bot to me now? Why are you just giving away this info? This is some great alpha that's just being wasted right now.
But didn't you? I thought you watched an AIB video where they mentioned Bitcoin once, and heard is there's something to that story, right?
There is. So yeah, the funny thing was, I still remember that video. That was a video of honest marriages.
Yeah.
Via AIB. At that point of time, we heard Tanmay talking about Bitcoin, and after that, actually, Bitcoin made it into the news. So Tanmay actually got the trend way before.
And he bought 4 years later. That is awesome. Yeah, I think that story of like how it's such a bottoms up movement, and the fact that it featured in a AIB video, and you remembered that because Tanmay told me that's the first thing you said to him when you guys first talked, right? So I thought that was pretty funny. Richa, I'm curious to hear how you guys met. How did you all meet, and how did EPNS happen?
Okay, so that's like a very long. We went very long back. I think we met around 15, 16 years ago. Harsh and I.
Wow.
And so we were college sort of sweethearts, and and we had our own journey. Harsh has always been this person he didn't want to work for anybody else, to put it like in short. He always wanted to do his own thing. Always,
which is create bots that would buy shit coins.
Yeah.
Just to be specific.
Just coding and geeking it out and doing his thing. I moved into working. I was working with Deloitte for some time. Previously, I was working with Wipro. So I took that route. But been together for the longest time. And for my introduction to Bitcoin, I remember that Harsh had bought this Bitcoin. And back then, I think around 2017, they also sent you an actual coin that had the Bitcoin symbol. And it was kept in the house somewhere. And I discovered, I was like, what is this shiny coin that is also Bitcoin and also is actually a coin? So that was pretty intriguing at that point of time. And then Harsh was always into it. When we started ideating on the idea of EPNS, before that, we were working in a fintech startup. And we were doing a payments P2P solution there. And Harsh was a CTO, I was a product manager. And I think about end of 2019, we started ideating on, the problems that are there in the ecosystem and anything specifically that stood out. So this problem where, we were testing multiple apps, we were, trying different things. That whole experience of going back and forth to an app and not having that communication or not getting notified basically really stood out, because that was a commonality between all of them. That that was an issue that we saw across the.
Were there any problems, Richa, that you guys had, but you didn't think it was a big enough problem for you guys to focus your attention on? Basically, give us other startup ideas is the question I'm asking.
We're learning Solidity next.
Oh God. Not really. I think because Harsh had a mobile background and also had work on notifications. So I think that was something that just kind of stood out for both of us. And the story then, we took some time, research on the idea, and we wrote to Ethereum Foundation eventually. That's the sort of organization that helps mentors and works with the Ethereum ecosystem. We wrote to them that we have this idea and what do we do, and we were very nervous back then because the whole concept of sort of reaching out to somebody out of the blue and sort of asking them what do, we have this
Yeah,
idea.
it's such an un-Indian thing to do, right?
You're never,
right?
You're never encouraged to do that.
It's just
right?
the confidence to just ask for help has never been inculcated in us. Yeah.
And back then, I think we didn't even know like so many people. There's so many awesome people now that we know who, you just ask them for help. They'll be more than happy to just jump on a call, explain and guide you. But we did have like Google, and then we sent an email to them. And fortunately, they wrote back. And it was not just like a very formal email. They had actually read our idea, the concept, what we are planning to do. They gave us a whole bunch of resources, feedback, what could be the logical next steps.
Just to contrast this, right? If you want to start a Web 2.0 company, you typically make your own pitch deck. You have to do it yourself, and then you would pitch it with angels. You don't know where to find them. Typically, you would go ask other founders to make introductions for you. There's no real place where you can go find them, and then you would pitch it to VCs. Those VCs would then make a decision on whether to invest or not. And typically, a lot of them just say yes or no. And then you either get funded or not. And that's the life cycle. Contrast with Web3, where you guys come up with an idea. You don't know anybody. You literally email an email address on the website of the Ethereum Foundation and send them a document. And they respond with detailed feedback and resources you can use on how to start this project up. Just to be clear, we also interviewed the founders of Matic, and we've consistently heard how the Ethereum ecosystem is just so helpful to each other, and that's how they build those network effects, right? So I think that it'd be good for you to kind of talk through that process.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first off, like the Ethereum community itself and the foundation, I think the mentality is more around helping the ecosystem grow and build. It is really not about I'll give you this grant and I'll give you this much money and then start building. It's about an idea. You sort of start from, it's a journey in itself. Since last year when we wrote to them, they told us that if you have an idea, why don't you start with a POC? That's when we entered the hackathon. Harsh is more on the development front, and it was a 30-day hackathon. We coded, we wrote, we started on a white paper. Then we spoke to multiple project teams who were already there. Folks from Aave, Stani and his team, Ethereum naming service, and you meet so many wonderful people who have been part of the ecosystem, and they're happy to guide you on whatever it is. The brainstorming that happens is amazing over there.
Actually, I do have a story around that part, the entire community coming together and helping us out. I remember that we were building the POC out, and all of a sudden we just wanted to tweet that video. And we went ahead and tweeted the video out, and we got comments and likes from people who founded ENS, Ethereum Naming Service, which is like the blockchain domain. And then we also got comment and like from Yaniv, who basically created the graph.
Sorry, just the graph is a protocol that's very critical to Ethereum, and it's like the Google search of Ethereum, right? Okay,
sort of.
So this is the problem with non-indexing. Okay, so it's indexing. So it allows you to discover and search for information in an organized manner. Okay,
yes.
So the founder of that protocol discovers you.
Yes. And not only discovers us, basically tags another company called Ceramic or Treebox, which are into decentralized storage, and basically said that let's help these guys out. Let's help them in designing. Let's help them in feedback. And, that started a relationship. Later on, after the hackathon got over, we started talking, and we wanted to raise, and we just told them that we are not able to raise at that point of time. Maybe our pitch is wrong. And what this guy did, this guy basically offered that said, here's my calendar, set up a 1 hour call, send me your deck, I'll come. You can show me your deck, and you can basically tell me all about your pitch and how you're pitching, and I will try to help you out. Now, this is a guy who is in CMC top 30 right now, and this is the guy who was basically also launching its own token, and basically a very known guy in the ecosystem. People don't get to converse with him, and all of a sudden you reach out for help, and this guy says that I'll come and I'll let you guys make me a scapegoat. And we did make him a scapegoat. I mean, we basically presented our pitch for 2 hours, and he said, guys, just drop it. Let's try to do it in 10 minutes. But he was ready to do another meeting and another meeting after that. So that's one guy, that's Yanev from the Graph. But there's so many stories like that. I mean,
I
there's
just want to add in there, and I remember one thing that Yanev had said in that meeting. I think we told him like you're super grateful and like thanks for all the help, and he just said, and that's always stuck to me, is that you just pay it forward. Is all he said. So paying it forward is like such a, such a simple thing, but I think it also talks a lot about the ecosystem, because there could be people that maybe helped him, and that's what he's paying it forward with us, and that's the thing that he told us, and that's something that we would love to do for the new entrepreneurs who are coming out of India. However, we can help. So yeah.
Actually, that's the thing. That's the beauty about Ethereum. Why Ethereum is number 2. People say it's about innovation. It definitely is about innovation, but the innovation comes because the community and even the leaders of the community, they are just a tweet away, or they're just a phone call away. You can ask them almost anything. I mean, the guy or General Capital, the guy who basically runs it and basically funded Uniswap, he basically spent 12 hours with us just to make our pitch proper. I mean, again, 12 hours of his, he'll never see. And it was us repeating the same thing over and over again. You know how it is. I mean, you don't even, basically, when you're talking about an idea, you're like that, I should not even leave this part of the hair out just in case that will make a dent. Later on, we get to find out that it isn't about that. It's just about making sure that you realize or you are able to present something in 5 minutes or 10 minutes that this is a problem, this is a solution. But yeah, this guy did it for us. Then, Ethereum Foundation, they went out of their way, and they do go out of their way for any project that comes in. Even Aave, we discussed about Aave. So the DeFi aspect of our protocol, it actually came because this hackathon we joined, Stanley was the first one to validate that this is a very cool idea. And if you guys do it, I'll probably try to personally use it. So, I mean, this entire project of ours, it's basically the cumulated effort of like 100 or 150 people, who some of them are like community leaders, and all of them, they basically helped you out without asking anything in return. I mean, we have taken their time. Most of them also invested in us. One funny story is that at first, when we were raising our seed round, so we were trying to value ourselves at 2.5 million, and they came this investor, and the investor basically said, guys, 2.5 million is really less for something what you guys are trying to do. I'll tell you what, you double this valuation to 5 million, and I will make sure that I back you up so that I have a skin in the game. So yeah, this guy basically just told us to double our valuation and then put in money, which basically speaks a lot about the Ethereum community.
That there's just a lot of money going around.
That too.
That too.
So
Have
yeah,
you?
and,
Do you know if Vitalik likes your project?
Vitalik did write about our project in a way. We were the top 3 projects in Gitcoin Grant 7. So he writes about all the Gitcoin grants. So he did screenshot our project, and I think he will probably know about us. But yeah, we haven't spoken to him face to face. Though Vitalik's father likes our project. That is something which we know. And that's again from hackathon days. Vitalik's father liked the project, and at first we thought this troll guy who is just trying to take the name Butrick and liking everything.
He looks super young too, so
Yeah,
it's hard. Okay, so if you had to in 30 seconds explain to a crypto founder how to launch a project, they just have a laptop, they're in somewhere, in India, they just have a laptop, they have an idea. In 30 seconds, what are the steps they should take to launch this?
Got it. Write to Ethereum Foundation, join a hackathon, tweet about your project. Don't be scared that your idea would be stolen. And that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, other than that, just...
And write to Harsh and Richa.
Yeah,
Yeah,
write to
for
us.
sure.
Definitely write to us.
because they have to pay it forward. That's why.
I love it.
Tell me about Gitcoin. Like what happened there?
Gitcoin, I mean, Gitcoin is basically a way to fund your open source software. Think about it like Kickstarters, but in the Web3 vision. So over there, you can basically post about your project, and then people can come and donate to your project. But there's a big difference, and the difference is that the more popular your project becomes, based on their quadratic funding formula, the more they will back your project. So just for example, if we post about our project and 100 people just donate $1 each to our project, because of their quadratic funding, they will basically match that $100 with $1,000 or $100,000 or $50,000 from their kitty.
Got it.
So basically, it's a way to ensure that, if you are in the open source software, wherein everything is open, everything is free, and you are bootstrapped, then the best thing you can do is just post about your project. If people like it, then people will basically donate to you. And if more and more people donate to you, then Gitcoin will make sure that you basically get some sort of grant to keep on building.
Awesome.
These Gitcoin grant rounds happen like quarterly.
Yeah.
And, almost every project, I would recommend every project to go over there. We went over there. I mean, the community loved our idea. That's why we were the top 3 in Gitcoin TAN 7. So we got around 215 plus community members to donate to our project. And because of the matching round formula, we got $17,000 from Gitcoin. So that was the first time we actually earned after building for 8 months. So it was very, very nice. We hadn't raised anything till that point of time.
Yeah.
So
So you launched a POC, and then for 8 months, and then you got the first check you got was for $17,000,
yes.
which was
And-
basically like a seed. Like a small angel check
A pre
seed. Pre.
Basically, before Gitcoin, like Harsh mentioned, that we were bootstrapped for 8-9 months, right? Almost building and finding very creative ways to do marketing, just like tweeting it differently or just trying to do things in a very nifty way. And with Gitcoin grants and the support, and of course the check and the money is great to do things. But it also for people who are coming in the ecosystem and trying to build a project and a product, it also validates your idea.
Of course.
So so I think that validation really motivated and boosted our confidence as well, that what we are building is something that people like, and they would leave comments, and we would just go and reply to every comment. But it's nice because you feel validated for whatever, all the hard work that you've put in there. So I think 2 things out of that, right? The grant is great, and also the validation is exceptional, and the community support, it really boosts the morale of folks who are building there.
Okay, so this was the journey of EPNS, right? And today we have you working with different dApps, and I actually was wondering, Harsh, which is how. Let's talk about the token, right? Like the push token. How is that valuable, and how does it work, right? In order to get push notifications, you need a token. Like this is a new thing, right? Like most people aren't used to this idea that you have to pay for this service. Like, can you explain a little bit about how the tokens come into the picture?
So I'll start that with explaining what is Web3 and why is it different than Web2, and then we can talk about the token. So basically, when you are talking about Web2, most of the time you're talking about a server and client.
Correct.
So master and client relations. You have a server and the client connects to it, and the master decides what rules they want to enforce and what sort of package they want to charge. So, for example, this Zoom call, there will be a software as a solution charge which the Zoom might have levied on you, or you might be on a free package. But basically, that how much money the Zoom wants to charge for their service is decided by this master's server, or the Zoom server, or the Zoom organization. And it's quite easy because you have one master, and whatever they say, the clients, they don't have any say in it, and that's okay. But when you come to Web3, it's all peer-to-peer. So no server is basically running the entire show. A group of people running a software is forming the entire software. And those group of people is running the entire software, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's Ethereum, whether it's any other blockchain, as long as it's decentralized. They are talking about this peer-to-peer network. And then the question comes that if you have a software as a service solution, or if you charge a fee in the future, you cannot decide that on your own, right? There is no master client configuration. So for that, the other way in which you can do that is via democratic process, which is basically just how in a publicly listed company, you have shareholders of the company, and whatever things are going to be passed in a company, they will put forward a proposal, and 51% or higher people who vote for that proposal will make sure that the company passes that proposal, and whatever is written in that proposal is implemented. This is where tokens come in, or governance token comes in. So basically, if you are holding tokens of Aave, or if you're holding tokens of Uniswap, or if you're holding tokens of Push, these are all governance tokens, which means that you're holding those shares that will help you decide in the future how the software will evolve, what sort of fees the software will charge, what sort of core features the software will have. Because again, this is a peer-to-peer node. One thing which is different in Push, actually a couple of things which is different in Push, because we were creating this middleware which is for the open internet. So it's quite ambitious. We want everyone to use it. And because of that, we had to make sure that the revenue or the reward structure, whenever we have that in place, that is split evenly across all the participants of the ecosystem. And the Push token also ensures that. So essentially, it means that whenever we activate the fee, or whenever the governance token holders decide that we are going to charge a fee, then there will be a fee pool that will be again decentralized in that protocol. And these token holders, or people who are holding these tokens, they basically also become part of sort of the reward, or sort of the reward split, which will happen in this entire incentivized process. The other thing which the token holders will be able to do, apart from claiming these rewards, is making sure that the split of these rewards to all the crypto wallets that basically integrate EPNS protocol can do. So basically, these token holders can decide that if MetaMask comes in and integrates EPNS protocol, then the token holders can decide, okay, sure, MetaMask has 1 million people, and if they want 30% of the revenue which is getting generated from the protocol, then yeah, sure, let's give them that 30% revenue. So again, it's about governance. It's about rewards and incentivization split, or the fee split from whenever the protocol starts earning. And then the third phase is about incentivizing all the third-party developers to come and build on the top of protocol. Basically, if you are building on top of our protocol, then the project will give you push tokens because you are building on top of. Or if you are running our push nodes, then the ecosystem will give you our tokens in lieu of running our push nodes. So that's more like the game theory behind Bitcoin and Ethereum as well. That if you're running the Ethereum node or Bitcoin node, which is just the software, if you're running that, so as long as you are running it, the system will decide to give you some Bitcoin or some Ethereum, just as a way to incentivize you to run the software. So these are the three ways by which the push token operates.
It just like it's such a simple service, right? Like which has been taken for granted, but I didn't realize I was paying for it through data, essentially, like data about me. And now I realize that holy shit, when you go to decentralize it, it's no longer as simple as I've been using it. What do you guys think about ETH's scaling debate, right? And how do you see a multi-chain world?
ETH scaling debate. I mean, I love that.
You love the debate.
I love the debate. I love the debate, and I love that we are at this point. I mean, that basically signals that we are not like early now. We are at least now to a point wherein we are facing problems which needs to be solved. I mean, again, I look at it with a lot of internet analogies. So when internet was launched, people had no idea what you can do with it or what to do with it. So, you went through so many phases. You went through people trying just to open just professional websites, and then, they grew to social, and then, to e-commerce and so much other things. And in each of these phases, there were certain things which needed to be solved. And, internet as a whole kept on solving those issues. So I see that entire contrast with ETH 2.0 as well. The fact that we are talking about scalability means that we have already ensured that this blockchain technology is something which is here to stay. And when it's here to stay, let's talk about how to improve the flaws in it. So yeah, I love that. In terms of different skilling solutions which are getting talked about, I mean, very big fan of Polygon. Partially because I'm friends with them as well. So that's the issue also. But yeah, also like ZK Rollup and Optimistic Rollup, I think Polygon is trying to encompass them as well. So it's all cool. I think in the short to mid run, Polygon will definitely be the thing that will work well for the Ethereum to scale up. And in the long term, I mean, ETH2 with Optimistic Rollup and maybe ZK Rollup will work well.
Richa, this is another question that we ask everyone, which is, what does your personal portfolio look like? Like, are you guys now, since you're building a decentralized protocol, are you guys all in crypto?
Yeah. So firstly, I have a very small personal portfolio. I'll be really honest about it. Don't have much. It's typically ETH and a few stable coins, because we have to use dApps and test out a few things. But that's where it all lies. And in the future, yeah, that's what I was going to have. But we don't have any right now because of the vesting schedule. So, but we are looking forward to getting our push when it comes to us. So yeah, that's what it looks like.
Harsh, you've been into crypto since for a while now.
I have a lot of shit coins.
What would you recommend to people who are just entering crypto, right? Like, I mean, me and you have had these conversations multiple times.
Who are these people? Are these people our enemies or friends?
If they are your enemies, would you just ask them to replicate your portfolio full of shit coins?
Yeah. That will.
I mean, you guys know that we're in like a bull market. You guys ever
I think they might know, Tanmay.
Yeah.
There's a small chance.
Have you guys ever thought about what happens to your project and in general during the bear market?
We have actually. We have, because some investors also asked us about it. Uh, so yeah, we have thought about it a lot, and the answer is actually very simple. I mean, we are all of us are here for the tech, right? To keep on building, I mean, there's no way you can time the market. People have tried, algorithms have tried, softwares have tried. You are not able to, you are not going to do it. So the truth is that if your project has potential, if you think there's a real use case of the project, you just start that project up. The reason why you raise is because you prepare for the bear market. You prepare that you have at least 2 or 3 years of head run in case everything goes down the drain, even in case your token goes down to zero. You are able to continue because you have budgeted everything out. That's why raises are important. That's why people raise instead of just raising via tokens. So yeah, a lot of good neat projects and neat project founders told us that we don't really have to worry about the bull or the bear market. Just keep on carrying out the work, and in the long run, I mean, everything good will basically shine. Everything which is bad, it will just turn to crap. So yeah,
Thanks, Dad,
that's
for that helpful life advice there. Richa, can you tell me, can you think of some other protocols that you think Ethereum currently needs?
I kind of know a few, but which are getting built though. But
What are you excited about?
we know a bunch of folks who are building decentralized video solutions, which would be pretty interesting as well in the future.
Decentralized video sounds intense, right? Like that's a lot of data.
Yeah, so it's basically, I think they Harsh knows knows the tech a little more behind it, but I think it would be an alternate to your Zoom solutions and your Google Meet, keeping, I think, the privacy as well as the
Are we already there yet, Harsh? Because I mean, just maintaining a ledger seems hard enough right now.
I mean, yes and no.
Huh.
It's more like if you are an expert, then probably yes, we are there. Otherwise, it will take some time. So yeah, but look, I mean, there are a lot of interesting projects that are getting built. Polygon was one. It has just started performing now. We all know that. But the point is, I mean, we have passed the early stage, but we are at the build phase. So not a lot of things have been built right now. I mean, apart from decentralized video, there's so many things I can think of, like a decentralized social network. And when we are talking about decentralized, we are talking about this entire thing, like the peer-to-peer network. I mean, as I was talking about the master client and the peer-to-peer network, there's one main advantage of the peer-to-peer network nodes. Since no one controls that, it's very, very less prone to hacking as well. And again, it's also not prone to egos of a company or, companies changing terms. So in a way, it's a very cool architecture moving forward. There are a lot of things that are still needed to be built. And I think India is poised to build most of them. I am seeing a lot of trend wherein a lot of Indian startups are coming up.
You think so? Indians
with
are poised to build a lot of it. Why do you think so?
It sounds very weird, but the reason why I think so is because I know that we were service leaders. So a lot of Indian people, they already know exactly what goes in what software, or how does a software operate. And I know that Web 2 and Web 3, people are going to build most of the things that are on Web 2. They are going to basically build it on Web 3. So because of that, we are at a very unique intersection wherein we have the service industry that knows how to build things, that knows all these technologies, even the peer-to-peer technology. A lot of people know about it. It's just that blockchain, basically, they don't understand that this is just peer-to-peer in a very fancy word. So As so because of that, I know that India, the amount of talent we have, because we know that these are the things which are there, this is how they operate, and we know that okay, we just have to transform them from web 2 to web 3. Because of that, I think we are poised to build a lot of innovations from India.
If someone had
it's-
to educate themselves about Web3, where can they start?
Web3, I mean, start with a hackathon, guys. That's the best way to start. We started with a hackathon, and we realized that it basically covers two of the most important aspect. One is the learning part. Whatever things you don't know, the hackathon is built around that concept. They will explain it to you with a ELI 5 attitude, which is what you need. The second thing is that once your idea starts getting a bit bigger, you have so many Web3 leaders joining the hackathon, so you can talk to them right. I mean, face to face. You can tell them your idea. They can tell you exactly how to work around it. So yeah, that's the best place to start. And then Twitter. Tweet about your ideas.
The crypto Twitter is like different universe.
Yeah, yeah.
But I just want to add like to what Harsh is saying. So there are like in the ecosystem itself, right? I mentioned Harsh like is the technical person. I'm more on the marketing front. So like hackathons, one should also think that it's not just about going and coding. You can always enter a hackathon with a skill set that you are comfortable and you specialize in. So go there, like join a team. So brainstorming can happen, with so many different skill sets that you have. So whether a developer or a marketing person or somebody who's into research, so different skills, and I think that's when you can create and form a team. So a lot of hackathons encourage people to come and form a team. So that's like a great starting point for a lot of people.
Yeah, I was going to make an observation of how even the Matic founders made an observation that they are really their competitive advantage was service, customer service, and responding to developers, helping them through this, right? And so, if you look at the strength the Indian tech industry has had, whether it's Infosys, which built stuff for other companies, which is now the next evolution of that was SaaS. Right. So you have all these SaaS companies building products for other companies effectively. And now you have these Web3 projects, right? Tanmay, which is like they're basically EPNS they're building stuff for developers of Compound and all of those are all retail facing, but Polygon and EPNS are all servicing them, right? So what happens is the retail facing ones tend to get most discussed.
Correct.
The infrastructure and the middleware tends to kind of like not get that discussed. So I think that of course that part is sexy, like you're an internet bank, but without all of this, without the scaling solution and the notification system, it's not going to work. So
yeah, and I love the idea of Indian engineers being building the infrastructure for Web3, right? Like because everything is so open source and it's like the ecosystem is growing on its own. It's your opportunity to come in, and I think just by sheer maths, we should be able to have a substantial contribution.
We come in big numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. You look outside. If I look outside my window, there are 11 developers just right next to me, just statistically.
If you had to pitch the like developers who are in Web 2, okay, they're in a fintech company, they're in like a startup, and they're like, okay, my life makes no sense, and I some version of that.
Just the disdain for Web 2 is hilarious.
Right? They're like optimizing the color of some button, and because they were asked to run an A/B test, and then they're trying to optimize a funnel, and the funnel is a broken product, and you're like, okay, this does not, guys, we should not be doing on-demand laundry in Gwalior. It's not a startup idea. But their VCs have already done Series Z on them, and so they have raised $45 million. And they have to find a way to make on-demand laundry work in Gwalior. So now you're talking to these product managers and engineers. If you have to pitch to them why they should change their life or turn their life around and come into Web3, what would be your simple 60-second pitch? Maybe you can ask both of you actually.
So 60 seconds pitch, guys. Come join us. We are hiring. There shouldn't be a need for laundry in Gwalior. Laundry. So yeah. That's the best.
I think Akshay meant more of a pitch for Web3, not
Web2.
come join us.
Yes.
Ki, why should
And
you
they're
be
not
on
actually
Web3?
doing it. I hope there isn't a company doing laundry. I hope,
Got it. So I kind of butchered that question.
Yeah,
Akshay. Can you please?
Richa, do you want to go? Do you
Yeah,
wanna
yeah,
The this question is very simple, right? Why should you be working on a Web3 project?
I've seen Web 2 and also now working in Web 3. It is, I mean, for lack of any better word, it's super liberating for some reason. It's just for me. I think every time we talk to people in terms of the community and the ecosystem folks who are there, just the culture and the tech both are extremely welcoming, and they are very open as the tech itself is. And I think that would be the future eventually. With now all the lockdowns and everything, we are pretty much working from home, and we are talking to people who are sitting across the globe. We are building with teams that are fully distributed. And this opportunity, I mean, I think the pandemic has had like really bad effects across the world, but also I think in terms of the growth of the ecosystem, it's really boosted the entire ecosystem, because now people have realized that like you mentioned, Akshay, that you have a laptop, you have an idea, what do you do next? There are hackathons that are happening every month. Just do one of those, start building from the bottom up, and you learn something eventually. Either you'll build your own startup, or you might just join somebody else. But the process and the journey is important, and I think there's a lot of learning there.
You know how, like, the parallels I see here are what the word startup meant to a conventional job, right? Like the arguments were similar. Oh, it'll be, you'll feel, it's very liberal and it feels, liberating and etc. etc. Take the leap and, try something new. At the very least, you learn something. It almost feels like what the conventional startup did to your 9-to-5 job. There was a system. You went to school and then you got a degree and then you got a job and then you led this life. This is something that can free you of that. Almost feels like Web3 is something that could free you off almost the Web2 system that's been created, right? You're on your own. You ask for help and figure it out. We're all building this thing together.
And just on the funding side, right? Like where in maybe the last year or a couple of years back, where you would feel that sitting in India, sitting in a small town, you build something and then you raise something from investors, and I mean, across the globe. It's not just that you're raising locally, but you are also reaching out to funds, to folks who are who either you connect through Twitter or you connect through, introductions, but you're raising from across the globe. So there are no barriers left. You don't have to take a flight, go to San Francisco, present a pitch deck. All those notions are now broken, and I think that's what Web3 does. It makes everything so seamless, so borderless, like how the applications themselves are.
I'm inspired. Let's learn Solidity tomorrow.
Here's my pitch, right? If you don't like working for somebody else, highest form of expressing that is working in Web 3.0, because you can basically see, even if you're working at a startup, unless you are the, even nowadays, even with Web 2.0 CEOs and founders, they're basically reporting to investors on some level, right? Because there's so much pressure on them to grow. And so because there are, when you report to someone, when there are expectations, right? When you have high expectations, so you tend to end up reporting, a reporting line gets created. With Web 3.0, the expectations are so low. Crypto is priced as if it's a scam, as if it's a complete vaporware. It's never going to scale. It's like the worst thing. It's rat poison squared. Okay, it's priced as if it's get hacked, regulated. It's going to go to zero. It's going to go. People will pay you to buy tokens. Like that's kind of where it's. So clearly that market opportunity is so underpriced. Okay. Now, there's not a lot of competition. That's the right time to get in, And so I remember when we launched Uber in India, it was like, you're a taxi company. This model is never going to work in India. And then, there's not enough cars. Why would I ever use? I use auto rickshaws. And then it was just a constant stream of complaints. And when you hear that means there's opportunity. So that's one. And two, the way y'all did this is pretty inspiring. You just basically put up, you just sent an email to contact at, I don't know, Ethereum Foundation. web3.org, and they responded, and you tweeted, and you got funding. There are people who are startup thought boys who are writing stuff on startups every day, and thank God they're not getting funded. But I'm so incredibly inspired every time I hear someone from the Ethereum community on how they raised money. They basically had a laptop and a Twitter account, and they knew how to code. We don't know how to do the third. So at least, between Tanmay and me, we're so happy that we get to talk to people who can do all three. And so this podcast is an excuse for us to get calls with you guys. Otherwise, I don't think you would talk to us. So thank you for being so kind to give us your time.
Harsh, your pitch to Web 3.0. Can you beat that? Can you beat that pitch?
I cannot. I mean, this was the perfect rant. In my head, I was going to Pyar Ka Panchnama to and the dialogue.
But Web 3.0 edition.
But Web 3.0.
Oh my God. After this call, Akshay, I'm going to show you the rant that he's talking about. And you will want to beat Harsh up for comparing this to fucking Kartik Aaryan in Pyar Ka Panchnama. Phenomenal, guys. Before we go, is EPNS hiring? What roles are you hiring for?
Sure. So, we are hiring. We are hiring for the role of CTO, along with front-end engineer, back-end engineer, and anywhere in between. I mean, guys, if you want to join Web 3.0, just write to us.
So what will you do if all these people come in?
Good point.
Manage his shitcoin portfolio.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other rules?
No, apply to us. We are hiring constantly. But the thing with Web 3.0 is you need to evolve very fast. So if you just want to learn and just want to, try your ideas out, just come and join us.
You can contact Harsh at contact@shitcoinholder.com. He will reply very, very soon.
Maybe somebody would.
Harsh, Trisha, thank you so much for joining us today on Super Pumped. A pleasure as always. Chat with you guys very, very soon again.
Thanks so much.
for having us.
Bye, guys.
Akshay. Yeah.